Hello everybody, welcome to this edition of Kev Thinking Out Loud. Wanted to just give a bit of a recession update on everybody. A lot of stuff happening in the news. Some of it perhaps a little more predictable than what we might have been led to believe. As we sit right now, this is the first week of June, and the market set a significant bottom, it seems, in the first week of March. Since that point in time, we've experienced a rather sizable and strong rally and are up substantially from that significant low in March. However, as you could probably tell, there's still quite a ways to go before we feel like we've recovered from to a point that existed before this recession actually began. But nevertheless, it's still quite encouraging that things have been starting to look a little more positive recently. The recession continues to show signs of slowing right now, actually. There's been some subtle shifts. We're still firmly in a recession, but if we look at some of the things that are taking place, some reasons to be more hopeful than some of my previous video blogs in the fall and in the winter. Unemployment is one major thing to look at, and even though the unemployment rate is still rising, the rate of job losses is showing signs of significant slowing. There are still more jobs being destroyed than created. However, the rate of decline in employment continues to significantly go downwards, which is the first thing it needs to do before it actually stabilizes and goes back up. Despite the fact that the rate of job declines is slowing, it still should be expected that the actual unemployment rate will continue to rise. If you reflect on the previous video blog I did on recession, you may recall that things like unemployment peak at the end of the recession. So we fully expect that to be the case here as well. The other thing that we're seeing is that bankruptcies are continuing. In fact, they perhaps are accelerating. There have been a couple of significant bankruptcies recently, being Chrysler and General Motors. Things that we had feared might happen in the winter have now come to pass. However, it's quite common that bankruptcies also increase in the later stages of a recession as well. Another interesting observation is that even in the face of the significant bankruptcies that everybody seemed to fear so much 6 months ago, even in the face of these things becoming reality, the markets have continued to rally strongly even in the face of those things. And again, if you go back to the video blog I did in the fall, I talked to you about the quirkiness of recessions, especially in the later stages, where you're going to see some major negative news in the media, yet in the face of that, markets can often go up. And we're seeing this actually play out. Another significant alteration in the last several months is that of consumption and demand. Consumers are not staying away to the same degree they were earlier in the recession. More people are showing up and actually buying, and some of those figures are actually more encouraging than the estimates were. Two reasons for this primarily that I can think of. One is that affordability of major items has, in some cases, hasn't been as low as it is right now. Affordability is quite high. Price is very low. Hasn't been this affordable for houses and cars, for example, in a very long time. So with prices being as low as they are, more consumers are overcoming their fear and actually taking advantage of these prices. Also, the interest rates being as low as they are means that the financing costs are very affordable. The other reason for consumption being perhaps a little more encouraging than what we had become accustomed to is the concept of pent-up demand, which, again, I talked about that in a December blog. Demand can only be deferred for so long, and many consumers are coming back, and we're actually hearing about this in the media now, pent-up demand being discussed in the media as a reason why consumers are spending. So please, if you have time, go back and review those two blogs, Recession back in the fall and Pent-Up Demand in December. In the end, I believe that this recession will turn out to have been just as predictable as any other recession. It's hard to believe, but the sequence of events that are taking place in this business cycle are similar and just as predictable, I think, as any other recession. The reason it's hard for us to believe is because that this recession will probably end up having been the most serious recession in the lifetime of anybody that I know or deal with today. We're probably at least going to have to go back to the recession of the early 80s to find one that was similar or potentially worse, although I believe that by the time this one's over, it will have beat most of the measurements of recession, even from the 1980s. So those types of things that are turning out to be, I think, just as predictable as any other recession are things like interest rates falling to substantially low levels, fiscal policy, governments being willing to be more generous on the fiscal side to stimulate growth, unemployment growing throughout a recession and peaking at the end of the recession. Also markets beginning their recovery not when a recession ends, but in the midst or the second half of the recession. I believe that's what we're seeing right now. So the overall elements of the business cycle in this recession are really no different than they are in any other recession, and I find that to be most encouraging at this point, because if we do believe that the recession will end in the second half of this year or early in 2010, then it would be completely normal for the markets to respond positively to that sometime between now and over the next few months. So hopefully we won't be retesting those lows of March, although keep in mind we can't know that that won't happen, but I do firmly believe that brighter days are ahead and that patience will be rewarded. In fact, I believe that more now than ever. Thank you very much for tuning in. Look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Have a great summer, and we'll see us throughout the year. Thank you very much.